Welcome back to the Skills Staircase, a series dedicated to building your foundational knowledge in technology. In our last episode, we laid the groundwork by demystifying the OSI and TCP IP models. And today we're going to take a critical step up the staircase and dive deeper into the TCP IP model from a security engineer's perspective. If you're in security, you can't just know what the layers are. You need to know how they can be exploited and where to place your defenses. The internet is built on three pillars: IP addressing, routing, and packet flow. A vulnerability in any of these can compromise the entire network. In this episode, we'll discuss these three pillars, highlighting the attack surface and the defensive controls at each stage. This is the essential knowledge you need to master network security. Let's quickly recap the TCP/IP model. Application, transport, internet, and network access. For a security engineer, these layers aren't just abstract concepts. They represent distinct attack surfaces and control planes. Our job is to shift from a purely functional view, how does this work, to a security mindset. How can this be broken and how do I defend it? We need to understand the normal, expected behavior of a packet so we can instantly spot abnormal and malicious behavior. This means focusing on the internet layer for addressing and routing, and the transport layer for connection state. These are the primary layers where critical security decisions are made and where most network-based attacks originate. First, let's talk about IP addressing. An IP address is a device's logical identity, essential for routing data across the internet. It operates at the internet layer or layer 3. We primarily deal with IPv4 and the rapidly growing IPv6. The key concept here is the split. Every IP address has a network portion, which tells routers where the network is, and a host portion, which identifies the specific device on that network. For security, this split is fundamental. It dictates how traffic is segmented, how firewalls are configured with rules based on subnets, and how quickly an attacker can map out your internal network topology. Understanding subnetting is not just for network admin, it's a core security skill for segmentation and access control. The security implications of IP addressing are vast. The most common attack is IP spoofing, where an attacker forges the source IP address of a packet. This is often used in denial of service attacks or to bypass simple firewalls that only check the source address. Another critical security task is reconnaissance. Attackers use IP addressing knowledge to scan your network, identifying which hosts are live and what services they are running. This is the first step in almost every targeted attack. Our defenses must be layered. Ingress and egress filtering are crucial. Ingress filtering blocks traffic coming into your network with source IP that belongs to your internal network, a clear sign of spoofing. Network address translation, NAT, and port address translation, PAT, also serves as a defense by obscuring your internal IP scheme from the public internet. Next, we move to routing. If IP addressing is the where routing is, the how to get there, routers are traffic cops of the internet, operating at layer 3, and their job is to determine the most efficient path for every packet. They do this by consulting a routing table, which is essentially a map that tells the router to get to this network, send this packet to the next hop router. This process happens millions of times per second. The most critical routing protocol is BGP, or also known as Border Gateway Protocol, which is the protocol that holds the entire public internet together. It's how large networks or autonomous systems exchange routing information. Routing is a massive security concern, especially at the internet's core. The most severe threat is BGP hijacking, where an attacker falsely claims ownership of a block of IP addresses, causing all traffic destined for those addresses, including major services like Google or Amazon, to be rerouted through the attacker's network. Internally, threats like route poisoning can be used to disrupt network operations by making certain paths look unreachable or by creating routing loops. Our primary defense at the router level is the access control list, or ACLs. ACLs are rules set that inspect the layer 3 and layer 4 headers, the IP address and port numbers, and decides whether to permit or deny these packets. For BGP, advanced defenses like route filtering and RPKI are essentials to validate the authenticity of routing information. Now, let's tie all of it together with packet flow. A packet is the fundamental unit of data that travels across the internet. As we discussed it in episode 1, today data is wrapped in headers, a process called encapsulation. As it moves down the TCP IP stack, for security, we care most about two data units: the segment at the transport layer, which contains the crucial source and destination port numbers, and the packet at the internet layer, which contains the source and destination IP addresses. A security engineer's job is to inspect these headers. The combination of source IP, destination IP, source port, and destination port is known as the four tuple, and it is the unique identifier for most every network connection. These four tuple is what firewalls use to track and enforce security policies. A perfect example of critical packet flow is the TCP three-way handshake. This is the mechanism that establishes a reliable, ordered connection between two devices. It involves three packets: SYN, SYNAC, and ACK. From a security perspective, this handshake is vital because it's how stateful firewall learns to trust a connection. The firewall tracks the state. Is the connection established, or is it just attempting to connect? The most famous attack here is a SYN flood. An attacker sends a massive volume of SYN packets, the first step of the handshake, but never sends the final acknowledgement, the ACK packet. The server is left waiting for that final packet, exhausting its connection table and denying service to legitimate users. This is a classic denial of service attack. The cornerstone of network defense is the stateful firewall. It sits at the boundary of your network and inspects every packet based on four tuple as we discussed. Critically, it performs stateful inspection. It doesn't just look at the packet in isolation. It tracks the entire conversation. If a packet is part of an established legitimate connection, like the one completed in the three-way handshake, the firewall allows it. If a packet is a response from the outside that didn't originate from an internal request, it's dropped. The simple concept is incredibly effective at blocking unsolicited external attacks. Security engineers must master firewall policy, understanding that the placement of these devices at the perimeter between internal segments, even on the host itself, is as important as the rules they enforce. While firewalls handle the basic perimeter and deny based on state intrusion detection and prevention systems, take security to the next level. These systems perform deep packet inspections, looking beyond the IP and port headers and into actual data payloads. An IDS is passive. It monitors traffic and alerts you to suspicious activity. An IPS is an active and sits in line, meaning it can actively block malicious traffic in real time based on the known threat signatures or behavioral anomalies. For security engineers, understanding where to place an IDS, IPS sensors, and how to tune their signature to minimize false positive is a critical skill. They are your last line of defense against application layer attacks that might have slipped past the firewall. To summarize, the key takeaways for every security engineer: IP addressing is your foundation. Master subnetting and use filtering to prevent the most basic attacks like spoofing and to limit reconnaissance. Routing is your network's GPS. Understand the risks of BGP and ACLs to enforce policy directly on your routers. Packet flow is the lifeblood. The first tuple is the unique identifier for every connection, and it's what your stateful firewall uses to track and enforce policy. Your job is to understand the normal flow so it can identify and stop the abnormal. By mastering the TCP IP basic, you tune the internet's foundational protocol into your most powerful defensive tools. And that kind of concludes episode 2 of the Steel Staircase. We've covered the essential TCP IP basics that every security engineer must know. If this deep dive into the security implication of packet flow, IP addressing, and routing was helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps us bring you more focused and actionable content. In our next episode, we're looking at how DNS works from a website to browser. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next step.